Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Racing House. My name is Sakki, and today we're going to be doing a different type of video. It's going to be another live stream. We're going to be talking T-shirts. We're joined by All About SteF1, joined
Hey,
by Peter on pole,
Hey,
and
what's going on, people?
ECTV Ellis. How are you guys?
Ahoy.
not too
Good, good,
bad.
good, good.
Excellent, man.
Good.
All good.
Doing well.
Ready to go.
Ready to go. So yeah, we're going to be talking T-shirts, guys. If you're in the chats, thank you for joining us so promptly. Give us a like, smash the like button for us. I know it's very cliche as a YouTuber, but I'm going to say it. We're going to be talking about obviously the incidents that happened recently with T-shirts on the podium. We'll fill you in briefly, but we're just going to be asking a few questions because the whole idea of these live streams is to talk about the things that don't really get that much attention in the mainstream media. We've noticed as a group that they've been discussed about pretty light touch briefly, but the main issues aren't really discussed in any depth. And the people that are discussing those topics don't really represent a wider fan base. So we thought we'd come together and have a good old chinwag. So, firstly, I'll give a bit of a recap. This year we've had quite a lot of activity in terms of protests and unrests. Black Lives Matter has been a hot topic throughout the world. One way or another, F1, the drivers, the FIA decided to start various campaigns. We have the We Racers One campaign, but also the End Racism T-shirts. And from there, Lewis Hamilton ultimately went on to wear a T-shirt completely separate to those approved kind of campaigns, and that's the main topic that we leading with, and then we'll go on to other areas and discussions around that. What do you think, Steph? We'll start with you. What were your general feelings when you first saw that T-shirt?
Oh, I was shocked. Because that's a big statement to make, so it's not a light one. And I have no doubt that Lewis is completely invested in his beliefs and into the Black Lives Matter campaign. But to wear that T-shirt is a big, big statement. And when I kind of got over that shock, I was really, really impressed that he had the balls basically to go and do that, to stand up against what a lot of people were saying, not just in the F1 community, but around the entire world, and stand up for Breonna Taylor. So that was an incredible thing to witness. And I'm so, so glad that he did it because it brought a lot of awareness to the matter at hand.
Yeah, I think when I saw that, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe he was wearing something so bold. Because if you think about Lewis back when he started as a rookie, I don't think he would have ever
Yeah.
even got close to being as vocal as he is now, or worn a T-shirt, or spoken out about all these topics that he goes over. Um, and I think how it kind of unravelled, that's another topic which we'll go on to a little bit later. But for him, I think he's kind of living up to all the talk that He does. He's very vocal on a number of levels, but he carried on that with actions, which is really cool to see from Lewis.
Mm.
Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, I concur with Steph. I think when I first saw it, I thought, my goodness, like that is bold. That is very, very strong. The kind of statement he's put, because it's almost like, let me not say he doesn't know everything about the story. Let me not say like he's ignorant to it, but to come out with such a punchant statement like that, arrest them. Let's not beat around the bush about it. It's a case of these guys need to go down for what they've done. It's not a matter of let's reinvestigate, let's do any of the above. It's more so arrest them. There's no way that this can be justice for anybody. And my initial thought was just like, it's another one of those sort of, as much as it was a bit bold, it was one of those things that, along with the end racism, along with the we Racers One, BLM, I thought it's going to be one of those that, okay, it's going to be a positive message. And quite contrary, you get a bit of a mixed bag with this T-shirt in particular, because I think it's a force. It's a point of action. If that makes sense. It's not like it's saying let's all be nice, let's all be good, let's all be friends. It's more so, no, we need some action to be taken here, and with that is going to come a lot of feedback. And yeah, it was shocking. But then, you know, the Lewis we're getting to know of recent, I feel like this fits right within his character. So yeah, it was a lot. It was quite big. Big up to Lewis on that.
Yeah, big salutation to Lewis. What about you, Ellis?
I think clearly it, just to tie into like what was being said about how he came into the sport and the kind of personality he adopted when he first joined versus now. Clearly, he's had quite a lot of, I don't know, pent up frustration, maybe from childhood, maybe from what he's either seen himself or he's been through, and it's obviously come out and manifested itself in this in some way, shape, or form. And I think I kind of had to take a bit of a double take when I first saw it, and exactly like Peter said, it's a strong statement to come out with relatively soon, I suppose, in terms of the adoption into the Black Lives Matter t-shirts, inane racism t-shirts, etc. in Formula One. So yeah, I had to take a bit of a double take. It was a big shock, but at the same time, I suppose there's two ways of tackling, or there's multiple ways of tackling every issue, and one of them is to go in with perhaps a controversial route to it, which I think this obviously has transpired to be. And if he's a smart guy, I don't think he would have expected anything different.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums up Lewis Hamilton. He wouldn't expect anything different other than a bit of a strong reaction from the FIA. Like, he's very politically astute in terms of F1. Him and his dad, they know when to pick their moment. Playing devil's advocate, you see how the way the FIA reacted to that T-shirt. They basically let slip that they were considering investigating it. They never said that they actually investigated it, but it became clear that they were considering it. And later on, they basically updated the rules so that it was very clear what you can and can't do up on the podium. Do you think that the FIA and F1 made a mistake? Because thinking back to when that happened, it was a Tuscan Grand Prix. Like, I was watching it and I was waiting for photos of Alex Albon. It was his first podium, and I was like, what is going on? Where are all the photos that people normally, when someone gets their first podium, they shout about it a lot, and there wasn't any media out there, especially surrounding Alex Albon. And then this is me being a little bit cynical, but at the same time, me thinking, was that censored because it made people unhappy because of what kind of impact it would have on a corporate level, affecting the sponsors, the image of F1 being associated with such a controversial, say that loosely, case in America. Do you think the FIA and F1 had any reason to be concerned or adjust those rules? Do you think they made the right decision? And like, I'm going to remind everyone who's watching this on playback in the live chats, this is about creating discussion. So feel free to leave your points down in the comments. Like, I'll never shoot anyone down for giving their opinion. Like, this is the whole idea of these kind of talks, is to create a discussion around these topics. And I'll always try and play devil's advocate, but I want to hear from all of you. Do you think the FIA and F1 made the right decision there? Because Lewis did push it in terms of how bold he was.
Yeah, I do think with the FIA choosing to investigate it, I think that was the right call, only because it's written in the rules that there aren't supposed to be controversial things on the podium like that, and there's not supposed to be political statements. So it makes sense that they were going to investigate that. But where I think the FIA failed was it was this massive secrecy around it. So they didn't actually come and announce it. We were hearing through all of these media outlets that they were investigating this, and the FIA did not make a statement saying afterwards, after it was decided that this was going to be dropped, the FIA didn't come out with a statement saying, we support Lewis Hamilton in what he's doing. From here on out, we are going to only have race suits. I feel like they could have handled the situation a lot better. Like, yes, it's written in the rules and they have to follow those rules, but I think with the amount that's going on with We Race as One, no one could say that. We Race as One, with the amount that's going on and the amount that the FIA is pushing that message, I just think it was very, very contradictory that they decided to investigate this and it was so concealed from everyone, and that there was just no sense of clarity as to what was going on with the situation, and I think that that's where they failed. Yeah, that's where I stand.
They could have. They could have. Sorry, they could have. They could have kept it under wraps. They didn't. To investigate it is the right thing. I agree with Steph on that point. The rules are the rules at the end of the day, right? But we're so early into this messaging, and if we're saying that the messaging has a place in Formula One, full stop, we're so early in this messaging. How they handled the situation, similar to what Steph was saying, but how they handled the situation is absolutely everything. Obviously things leak and stuff like that, and to a degree, I suppose that can't be completely helped in some ways, but some things are sensitive and some things so early in its adoption into the sport as well, they probably should have kept it under wraps. They could have done their investigation and then come out with a statement post everything, explaining the steps that have been taken along the way. The problem is exactly the fact that it got out and then they just kept their mouth shut. And they just didn't say anything. And there's been no summary to kind of, put a wrap around it and move on. If people wanted to hang on to it, they could still be sitting in limbo over it. Now, I suppose, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, things have moved on. And I'm sure this is probably going to be a question for later, but I'm going to probably say unfortunately, because I don't think it's being highlighted as much as perhaps it should be. However, they could have done a better job at keeping it under wraps, do the investigation, be detailed in it, have the conversation with Lewis, anybody else that feels that they need to have a point in this as well, and then come out as a collective statement with all those parties in like a unified voice. You're not always going to agree, but it doesn't mean that you can't stand together in that situation, so that you're saying, we might agree to disagree, but this is what is going to be the stance moving forward.
Ellis, I think that's the problem. You see, because I think the FIA as a whole, I don't think they're in unison about everything.
Yeah.
Yes, there's rules, and of course, they're investigating because they have to go based on what's compliant to their rule book. And I think at some stage they were sort of like, wait, should we investigate this? This is about a very serious situation. Somebody has been killed by police officers, and we're going to jump in and say, hello, you can't do that. The problem is that, I think some people felt like, what Lewis done is great. And then some people have thought, well, let's think about this holistically. Where does it stop? What if, for example, another driver comes up with a T-shirt that's about, whether it's to do with genders, whether it's to do with sexuality, whether it's to do with religion. This is a snowball that it could turn very, very ugly fast. And then what do the FIA do? Because they're going to have to sort of. I think the reason for just having race suits, as you say, it was to let's not have anything controversial. Let's just keep it to the uniform, and we won't get into any politics. We'll be free from that. And I'm sure that with somebody like Lewis Hamilton, who is a very polarizing figure, if he's standing on there, guess what? Formula One is a business. Who's to say that the viewership hasn't gone down? Who's to say people haven't turned away? And if you're a businessman or a businesswoman, the bottom line is your bottom line. If what Lewis is doing is going to cause problems, I don't want no rubbish in this. I need to wash my hands away from that and make sure we keep it structured. Now, that's the problem. There's too many things to factor in this that I think the FIA just how the government's dealt with this pandemic. They kind of don't know what to do. It was a bit of like, oh snap, what do we what do we do? Should we sit and have a meeting? But then I bet you any money they didn't even agree with their own rule book as well as agreeing with what Lewis did. So, it's one of those where the FIA had to do what it had to do. Should they change the rules? I don't think they should, simply because this is not the end. If you leave it open, if you say, you can put up any, I hate the word politics, because what are we talking about? We're talking about human rights here. We're talking about humanitarian, so it shouldn't be anything to do with politics. Unfortunately, that's the business we're in. And if you allow Lewis to do what he's done, then oh boy, this could get ugly fast. And what if you don't agree with something that's going to be put up on the podium? Are we then going to have another discussion here and talk about, is this wrong? Is this right? What should we do? Blah, blah, blah. So the FIA, I think, we're caught in a pickle, in a massive mess where just even like the way the outcome has happened, it clearly shows there is so much going on. Yeah. This thing just did more than make a statement. It caused problems across the board.
Yeah, definitely.
Politics is the point.
Definitely
Politics
did.
is the point.
Do you guys
And
think
that-
it
and
is a
that's-
politics issue, human rights issue, or do you guys
The
think?
politics is the problem, because, and this is where I agree with. I mean, yeah, I agree with a lot what you said, but the politics thing is the major issue here, because they ultimately handled it like politicians, where we didn't get to a net result. Whatever,
This is
whatever
what
that
I've
should
just
look
realised, Ellis. This is what I've just realised. They handled it in such, if anything, it was such a clever way, because they didn't address any of the issues. They just clarified.
Well, they've left us all talking, haven't they?
Yeah, they've just clarified their rules so that it's clear
Mm.
what you can and can't do on the podium, eradicating anyone ever wearing a T-shirt on the podium, which
And
it
who's
is
to
handling
say,
it
by
like
the way,
politics.
and let's say, for example, the FIA said, you know what, if we agree with what Lewis has done, man, look how much money we're going to lose. That conversation is being had. Whether we like to hear it or not. That at the end of the day, what they care more so about is the bottom line. They couldn't care less, and that's the thing. The reason why they shade the term politics is so that, because politics is not a nice word. So if you put politics surrounding that picture, then you're going to get more of a backing from people. People are going to be persuaded more to say, yeah, no, we don't want politics in Formula One. I came to Formula One to get away from politics. Yet the argument is, whoa, you said this is politics. Why are we even giving it that title? But anything involving human beings seems to be political, unfortunately.
It creeps its way in no matter what.
Steph, what are you
pretty
thinking?
much.
I can see you sat there
Yeah,
pensively.
well, I was just thinking about the whole politics situation and whether, because I think that there was a very big difference between Lewis Hamilton standing on the podium in that T-shirt and all of the drivers wearing their T-shirt and doing their We Race as One thing before the race. There's a very, very big difference. And I think that's more to do with human rights, because you're dealing with a race and you're saying we want equality for this race, and that's not political. Like, bottom line is that's not political, because we are talking human rights in that sense. When we move over to talking about Breonna Taylor and talking about arresting the police officers that murdered her, yes, I am on the side that those officers should be arrested. But you move into a dangerous territory when you start talking about stuff like that, because it's not just a sweeping generalization that you're making about the treatment of Black people around the world. You are focusing in on one situation that is extremely controversial, and that's where it can kind of get a bit grey rather than the black and white that I see it as. And yeah, so I'm not sure how I feel about the FIA's decision. I understand why they've made it, and I do think that it's nice to have the set of rules so that you know what happens and like why it happens, and everyone can abide by those rules. But I honestly don't think Lewis cares about those rules. I think he would do it again in a heartbeat, and we could very well see that again in the future, because Lewis, let's be honest, he does what he wants, and he wants to raise awareness on this issue, and so he should. And so good luck to the FIA trying to police it the next time that he does something like this, because he will.
Thanks for that. Just moving on to one of the comments in the comments section. It's basically saying that the FIA We Race as One campaign is basically all for show. What do you think about that?
Don't see the lie.
Because
I think with everything,
Yeah,
it's got a limit. Do you know what I mean? It's We Race as One up until a point. Do you know them ones? Like, yeah, we've got human rights up until a point. Everything is allowed up until a point. So it depends what your perspective is, because at the end of the day, at least Formula One has tried to do something. I don't want to bash them too hard on the whole We Race as One. I know it's not complete. We don't wholeheartedly follow the statement, which I agree with. But I'm shocked Formula One even addressed racism in the first place. Do you know what I mean? That was a shock for me, because I've watched Formula One since like 1998 sort of thing. So to see this, I'm like, man, this is a huge improvement. But I'm sure it's come even with backlash, even though we're talking about equality. So it's half path, I'd say. I think they've done,
Yeah. Thank you to Sebastian Ox, who said that in the live comments. Keep the live comments coming in, everyone. The more you comment, the more the video will get out, be shared with more people. Hit the like button as well. Go out and go down to the description and check out these guys' YouTube channel as well once you get the chance. I think Sebastian Ox basically said it's very superficial, and I kind of agree with that. And in kind of preparation for this video, I was looking at the F1's website to try and see what they've done since they started this campaign. Like I'm very aware of what happens on social media, but obviously the corporate side is where a lot of the work will happen, like on the grassroots level and in terms of what they do with people that have money and can really invest and put their funding towards these campaigns. And I couldn't find anything. I don't know what F1 have done since they've launched this campaign. There's the We Racers One T-shirts, so they're monetizing it, but what are they doing with that money? It's not very clear. Are they pocketing it? If anybody knows, because I can't tell what's actually happening. So when this initially started, like you said, I was very surprised that they actually came out and kind of did something around that topic, even though they don't mention racism specifically. It's more about a response to the pandemic for me. But things like racism and Black Lives Matter will loosely be involved in that. But what are they actually going to do long term? So when it first started, I held my tongue a little bit. I wanted to see what tangible things they were doing. And as of yet, I can't see anything. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed anything that they've done.
Like, very little, if I'm honest. And that was going to be my point, is that it's splashed on the side of the track. It's on T-shirts. It's on billboards, etc. But it was talked about for. I mean, I watched the Sky F1 coverage. I'd say it was talked about for probably 2 races, maybe 3 at a push in some sort of decent level of capacity. And then ultimately after that, like a lot of things, it peters out, and it's a shame. And it's a really, I think people would be engaged in it. I think if Formula One in the background were doing something and you're talking about the monetization element, if that is going to be an undertone, rightly or wrongly, if that ends up being an undertone to it, then they could be showcasing more of it on the TV time, because I think that would bring viewers in. I think it would bring, if you can see people actively doing something. Motorsport's not for everyone. In fact, it's for quite a small proportion of the population overall versus say a football or something, soccer, whatever you want to call it, something like that. But you would, if you could see a huge entity doing something genuinely life-changing for people and is a statement for this era that we're in, then it would bring people in, even if they're not that interested in motorsport. But overall, I've seen almost nothing since. I've not seen anything around the grassroots stuff unless you go really digging for it. To be honest with you, it's not front and center, especially with this year and people wanting a distraction away from the pandemic and stuff like that. You could put this front and center, and it would give people a bit of a nice sensation about what is being done in humanity.
Yeah, I think F1 are really missing a trick here, because
they've missed an opportunity.
Yeah, they've got the funds there. They've got the resource to do something more substantial, visibly, but they're not doing it. Like, I'm sure they are doing stuff on a grassroots level, but I get the feeling that they're doing it via other organisations. So they would rather separate themselves from that kind of activity, but they'll put resources towards it, but they don't shout about it, which I find a bit strange for the age that we live in. Normally, companies would want to really put that everywhere, put on their website, talk about it on social media. So the main feeling that I get is that they're missing a massive kind of opportunity to show how forward-thinking they are, because there's a whole raft of different topics and areas that trouble the world, and F1, they could have that impact globally if they show that they're leaders. Like, if you watch any other sport, they will at least show what they're doing about it, more than just a taking the knee or wearing a T-shirt. For example, in football, there's various different organisations. I know it's on a different scale in terms of reach and revenue and the number of people involved in the sport, but you could tangibly say what is being done on different levels, whereas F1 is a bit of a weird one. It seems very behind closed doors. Don't know what you thought about it.
It's also one of the few sports that is truly global as well. Outside the World Cup, the Olympics, and a couple of others, it's there's not. If you look at other motorsports, or okay, even if you factor in something like a cricket or something like that, where you do kind of go around the world, but you don't cover literally almost every everywhere. Formula One, okay, it changes sometimes year on year which countries they go to, but it's one of the few truly properly global sports. And you know, again, that platform therefore is infinite, but they're doing nothing with it, or not visually anyway, not something we can actually digest for ourselves and see happening first person.
Well, I'm going to slightly disagree there. I don't think Formula One is as global as it could be, because we don't have a race in Africa. That is literally the second biggest continent in the
Fair
world.
point.
That's a good point.
And we don't have a race there. And it makes sense because there is not like, the audience in Africa is not as big, but there are still places like South Africa. We used to race there. I think they have a massive motorsport community, and it would be a really, really great race there. And because it's still on the same time zone as kind of Europe, it's not a massively difficult one to strategize, to organize and stuff like that. Or somewhere like Egypt, still very, very close to Europe, it's doable. Like, we could have a race in Africa, and then there would be so many opportunities to see Black people in different aspects of the sport. So we could see them doing marshalling, we could see them in the background catering, use local Black produce, and use the local people. And then you're putting this on a massive scale, and everyone can see it. It would be absolutely brilliant to have a race in Africa. And I don't think we are global. If you think about it, the majority of the championship is in Europe, where the majority of people are white, and that's just kind of what we see everywhere. We just see white people on the podium, we see white people in the paddock, we see them everywhere, and there's not a problem with that. Well, there is. It would be nice to see a bit of equality, but those are the people that are there, and they're kind of a reflection of that. But it's difficult. How do you represent the world when you're missing one of these massive continents that are full of Black people? So yeah.
It's a very good point.
The reason why I went with the fact that I think it's global is because I agree with you, and yeah, it's a massive huge area that is missing. Obviously, absolutely huge. Unfortunately, it will obviously tie back to the business element of it, and they are missing an opportunity. You know, if they were able to go out there. I suppose when I say it's truly global, all right, it could be more global, but it's one of the few ones that touches on the vast majority of places. And even though most of it is in Europe, you do get the Americas, you get Asia, we used to have India, you obviously got America, etc. So it covers most. It'd be great if we could obviously have one or two or more in Africa. It'd be awesome.
Maybe
South America's covered as well.
Peter, what are you saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's one of those. I think when you start back to the question at hand, when you start doing the T-shirt thing and the kneeling thing, what ends up happening is maybe Formula One says, "Well, we've done our bit. You know, let's back it off a little bit. We've given them a little bit of an incentive for now." And what happens is that well runs dry over time. And so what Lewis done, funnily enough, why we even having this discussion, is because Lewis has now extended that. And it's that case of, look, let's not sleep on this. You know, like you said about, Ellis, you were talking about Sky F1. You know, that's where I watch Formula One as well. And like you said, first couple of weeks, it was like, even Martin Brundle was saying, look, we need to do more. We can't just talk about it. We need to get people involved. Let's get minorities involved. Let's get more people into the sport. And now, it's so different. The conversation is strictly F1, which, it's like, okay, I get it. You're there to do a job, which is to do F1. But at the same time, now you've raised this issue, let's not put it to sleep, kind of thing. And with, just like in football, you might say football has done something, but I'm even still struggling to see what exactly they've done or what any other sport's done, because part of the problem as well is, what do you want to see? What is it exactly that makes you think, okay, Formula One has nailed this now, they're doing brilliantly at this? Or, do we know what we want? Is it a case of, because at the same time, onto football, sorry, I'm watching Sky Sports and watching games be covered or on BT Sport, and then I'll see a Black player on every show now, or I might see a woman on a show as well, because of course women's football is huge. And it's almost like, okay, are you giving me a token gesture here? Is this a case of You're only putting him there because we made noise, you know. And even then, it doesn't sit well. It's a bittersweet thing because it's great to see it, but at the same time, you think your skeptic eye sort of sits there and thinks, like I'm getting bored of Micah Richards. I'm sorry, but yeah, like seeing him every single week, I'm just like, all right, mate, we like it, we get it. You're trying to mix it up, and that's all well and good. You want obviously everybody, no matter what race you are, the best person fit for the job. The question is, does everybody get that opportunity to do that job? And if it is a grassroots thing, then it's a case of, look, we're not gonna see this instantly in F1. Unfortunately, it's gonna take some time, but this was the moment when it happened. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, they were preaching about all kinds of stuff before, but it's only over time. They didn't see it in their lifetime. Let's bear that in mind. In their lifetime, the world was at its worst. And so what we're seeing, I mean, having black F1 fans, Jesus, when I joined this F1 community, to see black people, I was like, oh snap. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes
I second that.
I don't know if it's the case, because some of you may have never been F1 fans if there was no Lewis Hamilton. If there was nobody that looked like you and thought like, yeah, he's like, I relate to that guy, maybe I'd even be interested in the first place. But for some, it's a case of, no, I just love the sport. I just happen to be this race. So what? Let's get on with it. So I don't agree necessarily that any other areas have done anything. But at the same time, the problem is, well, what does that look like? What are we actually looking for?
Yeah, I think it's tough because it feels like Lewis is just there kind of fighting the battle by himself and having to get the people in leadership positions to think more and do more. Like the way he called people out on Instagram was I don't even know how to describe it. It was just insane. I didn't expect him to do that. But at the same time, should he have to do that when such things are happening in the world? I'm just going to move on to a comment in the chat from Beth F1. She says F1 needs to showcase the diversity that they already have. The only diverse role model we see on our screens is Lewis. We need to see engineers, PR communications, people behind the scenes. I couldn't agree more. Like, I think the main point that I often miss out on is the fact that F1 as an organisation is probably smaller relative to the teams. Obviously, there's a multiple of the teams. There's 10 teams. There might be a couple of hundred people working in each team. So it's really important that the teams like Mercedes did recently showcase and make sure that they're not promoting in terms of job progression, but really shouting about the people in their team and showing that they are diverse. So that's a really great point. I don't know if you've got anything to say about that.
Just talking about that point. I mean, I think it was Mercedes that came out and actually released their diversity figures. So I think they came out and said 97% of their workers were white and 3% were black, and then they also came out saying 88% male, blah blah blah. So it's not too bad on the it's still pretty bad on the gender front, but it's even worse on the race front. So they have a real parity disparity. No, they have a very massive gap in between having equality within their races. And if Mercedes are coming out and giving us those figures, no offense, but I see Mercedes as one of the most forward thinking on the grid. So if Mercedes only have 3% of their people as black or ethnic minorities, what do the other teams have? This is what I worry, because it's great showcasing the people that do work there. And Stephanie Travers, when she was on the podium, that was incredible to me because she looked like me and we have the same name. But yeah, it was brilliant to see her on the podium. And like you were saying, she's somebody that a girl like me could look up to and be like, oh, I can be like that. She's a representation of me. I can achieve something in this sport. So that was brilliant to see. But at the end of the day, how many others are there to really showcase? And I would like the other teams to actually take it upon themselves to release those figures or say what they are doing in order to combat this inequality that there is within their racial
Makeup.
You know what I mean? Makeup in their team. Perfect, that's the word. So I would like the other teams to actually come out and speak about that, because I think if Mercedes are the ones that are doing the most for it and they only have 3%, well, I really struggle to see what the other teams are going to look like and what the rest of F1 as a whole are going to look like, because Mercedes on Twitter, on Instagram, they are constantly pushing this message. And I don't see another team that pushes this message as much as Mercedes are. So I think Mercedes are the people that are going to be making that change. And I'm not sure I'm going to see that in the other teams. And I think that Lewis is a massive factor as to why that's happening in Mercedes. Lewis is pushing and pushing for that to happen within that team. But in another team, there is no one pushing for that. Do you know what I mean? So it's really, really difficult to see the diversity throughout the paddock when there is such an inequality in between what we know at Mercedes, and I'm sure that's reflected throughout the entire paddock on a worse scale.
Yeah, I kind of worry after Lewis leaves, but then I always forget that Alex Albon would be counted as someone who's from a ethnic minority because he's from Thailand, I believe. And then we've had people like Karun Chandok in the past and potentially other drivers as well. So let's not forget Alex Albon in this mix, actually. So there's one other driver in the mix for you. Go on, Steph.
Oh, what I was going to say is Alex actually came out and kind of said that he had not been subject to racism throughout his career, and I think there's a massive difference between the racism you get as a black person and the racism you get as an Asian person. It's often very, well, I can't speak because I'm not Asian, but it seems to be more stereotyping, and I don't think that they are. Oh, this is very difficult. I don't want to what's the word? Disrespect any of their experiences.
Oh, okay.
But Alex Albon himself did say that he hasn't experienced racism on the scale that Lewis Hamilton has. And no offense to Alex, I'm sure he's working behind the scenes, or there's stuff that we're not seeing, but he just doesn't seem to be pushing the message, and I'm not sure he has the drive like Lewis does to push that message out. So I'm not sure I can rely on him to kind of keep pushing that message once Lewis retires. I don't see another character like Lewis in the paddock who is going to continue this message.
The thing is, like I said, with Lewis, when he was young, he would never have come out like this.
Yeah.
And I often forget how young a lot of these drivers are. Like Alex, Charles, Max, Lance Stroll, they're all super young. Lando Norris, even younger. Like, they're all in their early 20s, so that with Alex, I don't put too much pressure on him with this kind of stuff, because as an individual, he's still probably trying to find himself and find his sense of identity. But I'm not going to speak for Alex anymore. I'm going to wrap this up in a minute. But before we do, let's actually answer the question that's in the caption of the YouTube video. Should they stop the T-shirts?
Absolutely not.
I've got an categorically no from you, Ellis. Go on, Peter.
No, they shouldn't stop it. It needs to be erased in the first place. And I think without Lewis Hamilton's T-shirt in the beginning, how many of the F1 community would even know a woman like Breonna Taylor was killed and murdered by a police officer? You know, and we cannot hide this. You know, we can't hide that kind of thing. The issue you've got with it, though, I will say, is that, okay, we can't stop at just this scenario. There's going to be plenty of others. You know, you got the situation in Nigeria at the moment. Okay, cool. Where do we stop the bat with that? You know, no matter what the cause is Formula One and are the drivers prepared to take on everything? Because you can't choose some situations and then discount others. So you're leaving yourself open, but if you're willing to take that risk, brilliant. But they should not stop the T-shirts, no.
Steph?
Sorry, go on.
Go on, Steph.
No, but I don't want these empty gestures anymore. So they can keep doing the T-shirts, but all I'm seeing when I see those wearing the T-shirts, and when the rubbish, no offense, no, you can take offense at F1, I don't care, when that rubbish little film comes on of everyone talking, saying that they race as one, I hate it. I hate it. I watch it and I'm like, this is so empty and meaningless that when are they going to stop that as well? When is okay to just stop putting that on. It's just a continued thing. There's nothing new. There's nothing that they're adding. It's literally just an empty gesture that they do at the beginning of a race that I hate, and I just don't think it shows that they're doing anything. So no, they shouldn't stop the t-shirts. They need to keep raising awareness. But all I'm seeing when I see those t-shirts at the minute, when I see those drivers who are stood there and those ones that refuse to kneel, all I'm seeing is an empty gesture. So the t-shirts to me mean absolutely nothing right now. All it's doing is raising a little bit more awareness. But what F1 need to do is do more. They need to go further with the t-shirts because, like
They
I
could
said,
use it
empty
as a
gesture.
platform. They could use it as a
Yes.
platform to build upon. It is relatively empty, and the disparity of some people kneeling, some people not, and stuff like that. Okay, look, it's just something unfortunately we're going to have to live with, and people can make their own decisions on that. The t-shirts and having the segment there, and I totally agree with what you said, Steph. I cannot stand that video that gets played. But the fact that they all stand there, the t-shirts are there, there's something visual at the start of every single race. I will take that as a small crumb of comfort, as long as it's the foundation for something much, much bigger. My worry is it probably isn't.
Yeah, I think you
I like
guys
that.
pretty much summarised my opinion there, because they can't afford to stop the t-shirts. I don't think they should, given the lack of activity elsewhere. Because without those t-shirts, someone just mentioned in the comments, the first step should be getting everyone to take the knee, which is a topic we haven't really talked about. But like you said, then it's like a lot of the drivers aren't doing it. It's very higgledy-piggledy, mismatched, and there isn't a united front from the drivers, FIA, F1. So I'll take the t-shirts. I don't think they should stop. I think having that there is a constant reminder for everyone what is actually happening and what needs to be done, even though the action and the steps that have been taken are pretty kind of empty. I'll take the t-shirts any day. There's no way that they can stop, because at some point the kneeling's going to stop, and then what else will be there? So, does anybody go on, Peter?
Can I just say one last comment on that? Because I think what's important at the moment, of course, you mentioned earlier about Alex Albon and how, because he hasn't necessarily experienced that racism, you kind of don't expect him to do anything, nor has he done much. Karun Chandok said the same thing in his time in F1. He doesn't even recall a moment when it happened, and he even had to sort of think maybe there was something, I don't know, but he's really having to dig. And my point is that Lewis needs to be in this sport for a long time, because of course he's felt it, so he understands it from a personal point of view. And if you're not in somebody else's shoes, you're not going to understand fully and completely why change needs to take place. Lewis needs to be here as long as possible, because if we take him out of the equation, I don't think we'd be anywhere near what we're discussing now. Knees, t-shirts, end racism, the lot, right? He has to make sure he stays around, because he's clearly been polarizing. He's world champion, for crying out loud, and he's a fantastic F1 driver nonetheless. And so somebody as a figure of that size, of that magnitude, he needs to stick around, because he's really. And I don't want to put all this heap of pressure on Lewis, but if he leaves, this thing decreases. And I know that his seat hasn't been confirmed for next year, so I'm a bit panicky. I'm a bit worried, but I think at the same time he needs to be here, because he actually feels what's going on. His heart is on the pulse, so he just needs to keep around, and that way we will see more and more some sort of change keep happening, as long as he's around. Because if we need somebody relatable.
Yeah, I think you pretty much summed up the general feeling. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you guys and Steph.
Thank you
for
Pleasure.
joining on the live stream. If you're watching this on playback, make sure you leave a comment. Remember to be kind, people. As long as you're kind, you can have your opinion. Don't jump down people's throats. Just please keep that in mind. We've got to respect other people's opinion. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Until next time, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.